Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're tackling something you guys specifically requested: how to use language more powerfully at work. You want to crush that presentation, influence decisions, just overall communicate more effectively. We're going to use an excerpt from the audiobook NLP, the Essential Handbook for Business, to kind of guide us through this. So get ready to unlock some serious communication skills.
Yeah, it's really amazing how much we underestimate the impact of language in a professional setting. It's not just what you say, but how you say it.
Exactly, and that's what's so exciting about diving into this.
Huh.
So let's get into the first concept, which is chunk size.
Okay.
The book explains it as the level of detail that we use when we communicate.
Right. Think big chunk versus small chunk.
Oh, wait.
So some people naturally gravitate towards, those abstract ideas like efficiency or growth,
Oh.
whereas others need those nitty-gritty details, the who, what, when, where, how.
Oh, I see. And actually, the audiobook suggests that this might even be tied to personality types, like those described in Myers-Briggs. You know how some people are naturally big picture thinkers while others are more detail-oriented.
Hmm.
But even without getting into all that, we've all experienced those frustrating moments when someone's either lost in the clouds or stuck in the weeds, right?
Absolutely. And that's where the communication breakdowns happen. Imagine trying to sell this bold new vision to your boss, and they're laser focused on this quarter's numbers, or explaining a complex technical problem to a colleague, and they just want the bottom line. So those mismatched communication styles lead to frustration and missed opportunities.
For sure. So how do we use this whole chunk size idea to our advantage?
It's like adjusting a zoom lens, right? If you need buy-in from someone, especially higher ups, you chunk up to the bigger picture. Focus on overarching goals and values.
Oh, okay.
So, for example, instead of getting bogged down in the details of a budget proposal, you might highlight how it contributes to long-term financial stability or enhanced customer satisfaction.
Yeah, you're speaking your language. You're
Yeah.
connecting with their priorities.
Precisely.
Yeah.
But then on the other hand, when you need to get things done, you chunk down.
Yeah.
You break those big ideas into actionable steps. Who's responsible for what? By when? What specific resources are needed?
Well,
So it's about moving from strategic vision to tactical execution plan.
that totally makes sense. This reminds me of that anecdote from the audiobook about the NLP mentor negotiating with a trade union.
Yeah.
And they were at a standstill over salary increases.
Yes.
The union was demanding a raise, but the NLP mentor skillfully chunked up to a shared goal,
Huh.
ensuring a comfortable retirement for the workers.
Right.
And that shift in focus, it just opened up all these new possibilities. They explored alternative benefits and solutions, ultimately reaching an agreement that benefited both sides.
Exactly. A win-win.
Yeah, it's a perfect example of how understanding chunk size
Mm-hmm.
can lead to those creative solutions that actually work for everyone.
Absolutely.
And this isn't just some fancy theory. It's something that you can actually use right away, whether you're leading a meeting, pitching a project, or even just having a casual conversation with a coworker.
Yes.
I think this is one of the most immediately useful things we've discussed so far.
Definitely. And as you progress in your career, mastering this chunking technique becomes even more crucial. Senior roles require that big picture thinking,
Oh,
the ability to connect the dots, communicate a compelling vision, that sort of thing.
for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've tackled chunk size. Now let's move on to something even more intriguing, which is the hidden power of words. And the audiobook calls these linguistic presuppositions.
Ooh, very interesting.
Yeah.
So these are the assumptions baked into our everyday language, that we use all the time without even realizing it. And they can subtly influence how people think and act. It's kind of like those optical illusions, right? Where your brain fills in the gaps without you even realizing it.
Right, right. So it's not just about the words themselves, but the unspoken assumptions that they carry.
Exactly. Think of it this way. Seek first to understand, then to be understood, as Stephen Covey famously said.
Oh, yeah.
By recognizing these linguistic presuppositions, we gain a deeper understanding of what motivates people, which allows us to tailor our communication for a more impactful connection.
Okay, I'm hooked. Let's break down a few of the most common types and how they actually play out in the workplace, because the audiobook gives some really fascinating examples.
Okay, sure. Let's start with existence presuppositions. These subtly imply the existence of something, which can be a powerful way to motivate action.
Okay.
For example, like when you say, let me know when you found the solution.
Oh, so it assumes that a solution does exist, therefore encouraging your colleague to keep searching for it.
Precisely. You plant that seed of possibility in their mind.
Okay.
Then there are causation presuppositions, where you link an action to a specific outcome.
Right.
Something as simple as, because you've made so many calls, you'll be more successful, can boost someone's confidence and drive.
It's subtle, but it's powerful. And what about those presuppositions related to time? The audiobook gave an example of how even like a slight change in verb tense can influence someone's perception of a problem.
Right. So, for example, instead of asking, what is the problem? A manager might ask, what has been the problem?
Oh, wow.
By subtly framing it in the past tense, the focus shifts towards solutions and moving forward.
It's amazing how these seemingly insignificant tweaks can have such an impact.
Yeah.
The audiobook also talks about presuppositions using adverbs and adjectives.
Right. Think about the difference between asking, will you be able to find the solution, versus how easily will you find the solution. The second one subtly emphasizes ease, not just possibility, influencing how someone approaches the task.
Okay, so just becoming aware of these patterns, that's a huge step, right?
Absolutely.
It's like having a secret decoder ring for conversations.
It is. By paying attention to how people use language, you can start to understand their underlying motivations and tailor your communication to resonate with them on a deeper level.
And we're not talking about manipulating people here.
No.
It's about building like stronger relationships,
Yeah.
resolving conflicts more effectively, and achieving those shared goals.
Exactly. Remember, communication is at the heart of everything we do in the workplace, and by understanding the nuances of language, we become more effective communicators and ultimately achieve greater success.
Okay, so we've kind of explored these hidden assumptions in language. Are you ready to zoom in on some specific words that can make or break your message? They seem insignificant, but the audiobook argues that they actually carry a surprising amount of weight.
Let's dive into that. What words are you thinking of?
Well, words like but, try, and don't immediately come to mind. They're so commonplace that we barely notice we're using them, but they can really undermine our message.
You're right. Let's start with but. It's a classic conversation killer, right?
Yeah.
You might think you're softening a critique, but you're actually negating everything you said before it.
Well, interesting. So instead of saying, great presentation, but you could tweak the ending, it's more effective to say, great presentation, and to make it even stronger, you could tweak the ending.
Yes.
It feels much more positive and encouraging.
Exactly.
Okay.
Using and keeps that positive momentum going while still allowing you to offer constructive feedback.
That makes total sense. What about the word try? The audiobook makes a pretty compelling case against it.
It does. Try implies uncertainty, a lack of commitment. Imagine telling your team, try to get me that report by Friday. It sets a much weaker expectation than a clear and direct, get me that report by Friday.
It's almost like you're giving them permission to fail before they even start.
Yes. And what about don't?
Yeah.
I remember hearing somewhere that telling someone, don't think about a pink elephant, just makes them think about a pink elephant.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like our brains have a hard time processing negatives. When you tell someone, don't do X, they have to like momentarily visualize doing X before they can even consider an alternative.
Gee.
So instead of don't be late, it's more effective to say, be here by 9 a.m. sharp.
Precisely. Given a clear and positive action to focus on.
Okay.
The same principle applies to words like or and yet. Or can limit possibilities, while yet transforms a limitation into an opportunity.
So instead of I can't do that, you say I can't do that yet, which keeps the door open for future possibilities. It's incredible how these small, seemingly insignificant words can subtly shape the entire tone and direction of a conversation. I bet our listeners are already starting to notice these patterns in their own conversations.
I'm sure they are. The key takeaway here is to catch yourself using these words and consciously choose alternatives that more accurately convey your intended message.
It's like gaining a whole new level of awareness of how much power our words truly hold.
Mm.
Okay, are you ready to take this language hacking to the next level?
Bring it on!
The audiobook delves into some seriously advanced language techniques. Milton Erickson's hypnotic language patterns. Now, before anyone starts picturing swinging pendulums and like spiraling visuals, we're not talking about mind control here.
Right. What's fascinating about these patterns is, often used in hypnotherapy, is they can be incredibly effective for subtle influence in everyday communication.
So think presentations, meetings, even sales pitches.
Exactly. These patterns utilize vague language, allowing the listener to fill in the blanks with their own interpretations and experiences. This can be incredibly effective in bypassing resistance and creating a sense of connection.
Okay, I'm all ears. Give me some examples.
Okay, one common pattern is using assumptions. Instead of directly stating something, you phrase it as if it's already accepted.
Okay.
So, for example, instead of asking, "Are you interested in learning more?"
Hmm.
you might say, "I know you're curious about."
So you're subtly leading them to agree with you without them even realizing it.
Exactly.
That's pretty clever.
Another powerful pattern is using causations. Remember the because example we discussed earlier? It works because our brains are wired to look for cause and effect relationships. Using phrases like, "because you're here," or "as you listen to this," creates a sense of inevitability, subtly guiding the listener toward your desired outcome.
It's like Jedi mind tricks for the workplace.
It is.
What other patterns does the audiobook highlight?
Equivalences are another useful tool. This involves linking two concepts as if they are synonymous. For instance, you might say, "This conversation is the start of a successful partnership."
So you're subtly equating the conversation with the desired outcome, planting that seed in their mind?
Exactly.
It's all starting to make sense now.
Good.
What about universals?
Universals are those sweeping statements that use words like all, every, never. Things like everyone wants to be successful or we all strive for excellence.
So by appealing to these like shared values and desires, you're creating a sense of agreement and unity.
Right.
Like speaking directly to the listener's deepest motivations.
Yes.
What other tricks are up our sleeve?
Don't forget about modal operators, which deal with possibilities and necessities. Phrases like, "we can't afford to miss this opportunity," or "we must take action now," instill a sense of urgency and importance.
Wow, the impact that these seemingly simple phrases can have is incredible.
It is.
The audiobook shares an anecdote about an NLP trainer observing these patterns in everyday business communication.
Yes, they noticed many people were using these patterns unconsciously, but often ineffectively. The point is, by becoming aware of these patterns and using them deliberately, we can significantly enhance our communication skills.
Okay, and speaking of real-world examples, the audiobook analyzes a snippet of a car manufacturer's financial report.
Oh, interesting.
And they found that the company subtly wove Milton patterns into their language to inspire confidence and desire in potential investors. It's fascinating to see it in action.
Right, they use universals like everything to create a sense of comprehensiveness and thoroughness. And they use modal operators like intended to convey a sense of purpose and direction.
It's like they're subtly hypnotizing investors with their words.
Uh-huh.
But if I'm being honest, all this feels a bit manipulative.
I understand that concern. It's crucial to remember that ethical application is paramount. The goal is to create win-win situations, not to trick or deceive people.
Right, right.
Think of these patterns as tools for building rapport and understanding.
Okay, I'm feeling much more comfortable with this now. So we've covered this abstract, hypnotic language of Milton Erickson. What's next on our language hacking journey?
Now let's shift gears from vague, hypnotic language to a more direct approach. Power questions. These questions, inspired by the work of Virginia Satter, are designed to cut through the fluff and get to the heart of the matter.
Okay, sounds intense. How are these power questions different from just like regular questions?
Think of them as meta questions.
Okay.
Questions about questions. They challenge distortions, generalizations, and deletions in language, forcing people to clarify their thinking and reveal hidden information. It's a bit like peeling back the layers of an onion to get to the core.
Ooh, I like that analogy.
Right. And the audiobook connects this to the communication model we discussed in a previous episode.
Oh, yeah?
The idea that we all filter information through our own unique perceptions and experiences.
Right, right.
Power questions help bypass those filters and get to a deeper level of understanding.
I'm intrigued. Can you give me some specific examples of these meta-model questions?
Okay. Let's start with distortions, those twisted perceptions of reality that can lead to misunderstandings and conflict. Remember the Milton pattern of assumptions, like, "I know you're curious"?
Yes.
A power question to challenge that might be, "How do you know I'm curious?"
You're calling out the assumption, prompting them to support their statement.
Exactly.
I like it. What about generalizations?
Generalizations are those sweeping statements that use words like always, never, everyone. A power question to challenge a generalization like, "we never do that," might be, Never. Surely there was a time when.
You're forcing them to acknowledge exceptions, the nuances. It's all about getting them to think more critically. And how do we use power questions to address deletions where crucial information is missing?
Right. For deletions, ask questions to fill in the gaps. For example, if someone says, I'm upset, a power question might be, about what specifically?
So you're prompting them to elaborate and provide specific details. These power questions seem incredibly useful for such a wide range of situations, from interviewing and sales to managing, and even just having a productive conversation with your partner.
You're absolutely right.
I love it.
And the audiobook highlights their effectiveness in problem solving. By asking the right questions, you can uncover the root cause of an issue and identify potential solutions more effectively.
It all comes back to questions. So we've gone from vague hypnotic language to these like laser-focused power questions. What's the final piece of this language puzzle?
The audiobook concludes with the power of storytelling. Stories, analogies, and metaphors are incredibly engaging and memorable. They tap into our emotions and help us make sense of complex information.
I've always been a sucker for a good story. Why do our brains respond so strongly to narratives?
Think about how children learn.
Yeah?
They're captivated by stories, right? It's how they make sense of the world. As adults, we never really outgrow that. Stories bypass our critical thinking and speak directly to our subconscious.
Oh, interesting. So how can we actually use stories effectively in the workplace?
One powerful technique is to share personal anecdotes about overcoming similar challenges. It creates a sense of empathy and connection.
Oh, okay.
You can also use stories about other people or well-known events for a less personal approach. And fables are great for illustrating abstract concepts.
You know, it's interesting that you mentioned that because you've been subtly weaving stories throughout this whole episode.
I have.
Like the negotiation anecdote, the NLP trainer, observing business communication. You know, they really bring these concepts to life and make them much more relatable and memorable.
Exactly. We've been demonstrating the power of storytelling throughout our conversation. It's something you can start doing immediately, whether you're giving a presentation, leading a meeting, or simply trying to persuade a colleague. A well-placed anecdote or analogy can add depth and impact to your message. It's like we're tapping into the power of storytelling as we speak.
Exactly. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Chunk size, presuppositions, those sneaky Milton patterns, even how to ask the right questions to get the information we need. It's like we've unlocked a whole new level of communication mastery.
Yeah, we've given you a toolbox full of techniques. Now it's time to see how they all fit together. Remember that car manufacturer's financial report we mentioned earlier? The one that used Milton patterns?
Oh yeah, the one that was subtly hypnotizing investors.
That's the one. Let's revisit that report and kind of break down exactly how they use those patterns. It's a great example of how these seemingly abstract techniques can be applied in a real-world setting.
Okay, sounds good. Walk me through it.
They use a phrase like, this new model is intended to revolutionize the industry. Notice the use of intended to. It implies a sense of purpose and inevitability without making a concrete promise. That's the modal operator at work, subtly influencing the reader's perception.
It's subtle, but it definitely creates a sense of anticipation and excitement. What other techniques did they use?
Well, they also employed universals, like using the word everything, to create a sense of comprehensiveness and thoroughness. It makes their claims seem more all-encompassing and impactful.
So instead of saying we've improved several features, they might say we've considered everything in redesigning this model.
Exactly. And by weaving these patterns throughout the report, they subtly guide the reader toward a sense of confidence and optimism about the company's future.
It's really impressive how they managed to achieve that with just a few carefully chosen words. But, you know, as we discussed earlier, it's important to use these techniques ethically.
Absolutely. The goal is to enhance communication, not to mislead or manipulate. Think of these patterns as tools for building rapport and understanding.
Okay, so we've explored how these techniques can be applied in a persuasive context. Now, how can we use them to, like, gather information and gain a deeper understanding of the situation?
That's where those power questions come in handy. Remember, they're designed to challenge assumptions, uncover hidden information, and clarify meaning. They can be incredibly powerful tools, especially in situations like interviews, negotiations, or even conflict resolution.
Can you give us an example of how a power question might be used in a real-world scenario?
Absolutely. Imagine you're in a team meeting and someone says, this project is just impossible, we'll never get it done on time. That's a generalization, right?
Yes, a pretty sweeping one at that.
Instead of accepting that statement at face value, you can use a power question to challenge it. You might ask, never. Has there never been a time when we faced a tight deadline and succeeded?
That forces them to think more critically about their statement. It also opens up the conversation to explore past successes and strategies that might be applicable to the current situation.
Exactly. Or let's say you're in a negotiation and the other party says, your proposal is just not feasible for us. That's a deletion, meaning they're leaving out crucial information. You could respond with the power question like, what specifically about the proposal isn't feasible?
That prompts them to clarify their concerns and provide specific details, allowing for a more productive discussion.
Power questions are all about prompting people to think more deeply and express themselves more clearly. They can be incredibly valuable tools for uncovering hidden information and moving towards a shared understanding.
This whole conversation reminds me of something. I used to be notorious for using the word but all the time, especially when giving feedback. My comments always came across as negative, even when I meant well.
It's easy to fall into those language habits without realizing it.
Exactly. It wasn't until I consciously started replacing but with and that I noticed a real shift in how my feedback was received. It became much more constructive and encouraging.
It's amazing how such a small change in language can have such a significant impact on the way we communicate.
It really is. Okay, so we've explored how these techniques can help us persuade, gather information, and even just improve our everyday interactions. But what about the bigger picture? How can all of this help us become more effective communicators overall?
Well, that's where storytelling comes back into play. We've already talked about how powerful stories can be in terms of engagement and memorability, but they also play a crucial role in helping us make sense of the world around us and connect with others on a deeper level.
Yeah, stories are like the glue that holds everything together. They provide context, meaning, and emotion.
Exactly. Think about the most influential leaders, speakers, and communicators. They all have a knack for telling compelling stories that resonate with their audience.
They use stories to illustrate their points, inspire action, and create lasting impressions.
And we can do the same in our own lives. Whether we're giving a presentation, pitching an idea, or even just sharing an experience with a friend, incorporating storytelling into our communication can make a huge difference.
Can you give us some specific examples of how we can use storytelling in a professional setting?
Of course. Let's say you're trying to persuade your team to embrace a new strategy. Instead of just presenting the facts and figures, you could share a personal anecdote about a time when you faced a similar challenge and how a particular approach helped you overcome it. By sharing your experience, you make the strategy more relatable and human.
It's like you're giving them a glimpse into your thought process and showing them that you've been in their shoes.
Exactly. Or imagine you're trying to explain a complex concept to a client. Instead of overwhelming them with technical jargon, you could use an analogy or a metaphor to simplify the idea and make it more accessible. For example, if you're explaining how a new software program works, you might compare it to something familiar, like a traffic control system or a recipe.
That's a great way to break down complex information and make it more digestible. And it also adds a touch of creativity and humor to the conversation.
Exactly. The key is to find stories and analogies that resonate with your audience and help them connect with your message on an emotional level. And don't be afraid to experiment and have fun with it.
That's a great point. Storytelling shouldn't feel forced or unnatural. It should be a way to enhance your communication and make it more engaging and impactful.
Well said. And the more you practice incorporating storytelling into your communication, the more confident and effective you'll become.
It's like any skill, the more you use it, the sharper it gets.
Exactly. And by weaving together all of the techniques we've discussed today, from chunk size and presuppositions to Milton patterns, power questions, and storytelling, you'll be well on your way to becoming a truly masterful communicator.
It's like we've given our listeners a comprehensive toolkit for navigating the complex world of communication. Now it's up to them to take these tools and start building something amazing.
And I have no doubt that they will.
So to wrap up this deep dive into the power of language,
Yeah.
I think it's safe to say we've covered a ton of ground today. From chunk size and those sneaky presuppositions to Milton patterns and even the art of asking those powerful questions, we've really explored how to use language more effectively in all sorts of professional situations.
Yeah, we've given our listeners a toolbox full of techniques to enhance communication, whether they're negotiating a deal, presenting an idea, leading a team, or just having a more productive conversation.
And what I love about all of this is that it's not about, manipulation or anything like that.
Right.
It's about understanding how communication works. and using that knowledge to build stronger relationships, resolve those conflicts more effectively, and ultimately achieve those shared goals.
It's about recognizing the power of language and choosing to wield it responsibly and ethically.
Exactly. So as we wrap up, what's like one key takeaway you want our listeners to really remember from this deep dive?
Now that you're aware of these patterns, what will you start listening for differently in your own conversations?
That's such a great question to ponder. It's like we've given you a new set of lenses to see the world of communication in a whole new light.
And as you become more attuned to the nuances of language, you'll not only become a more effective communicator, but you'll also gain a deeper understanding of yourself and the people around you.
So true. So keep practicing, keep experimenting, and most importantly, keep paying attention to the incredible power of language. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into a topic you've requested. Until then, happy communicating, everyone.